She never planned to be at the center of a mystery. Deborah Rivera was, by every measure, an ordinary woman, quiet, practical, the sort of person who served coffee after Mass and knew the hymn book by heart. In Corpus Christi, Texas, faith was the rhythm of her days. Sunrise prayers before work, evening rosary with her mother, Sunday liturgy with the same pew worn smooth by generations. Life was steady, even predictable, until the year her sister fell ill. For months, Deborah kept vigil in hospital corridors, whispering to statues and folded palms. When her sister recovered against grim expectations, gratitude replaced exhaustion. She told her parish priest, "I need to say thank you somewhere special." He smiled. "Then go to the mother's house." That suggestion, half blessing, half challenge, set her on a pilgrimage she'd never imagined. The group from Corpus Christi met at dawn under fluorescent airport lights. Retirees clutching rosaries, young couples with backpacks, one deacon with a guitar. They were bound for the great Marian shrines of Europe, Fatima in Portugal, Santiago de Compostela in Spain, and finally Lourdes, the valley where a peasant girl once saw a lady made of light. Deborah had seen pictures of the grotto, candles like a river of fire, the statue of the Virgin rising from the stone niche. Still, photographs couldn't prepare her for what waited beyond the Pyrenees. The bus wound through mountains dusted with mist. Pilgrims sang softly, the voices weaving English, Spanish, Tagalog, and French into one unbroken prayer. When the road curved and the first white spire of Lourdes appeared, Deborah pressed her forehead to the glass. She thought of Bernadette Saubiris, 14 years old, barefoot in the cold, seeing what others could not. The sanctuary smelled of wax and rain. It was evening when they arrived, and thousands of candles already floated in the darkness. The Rosary Basilica towered overhead, bells rolling through the valley like thunder wrapped in velvet. Deborah felt her throat tighten. Around her, pilgrims knelt, sang, and wept. There was no spectacle, only stillness that somehow moved. She lit a candle for her sister, and another for the quiet gratitude she couldn't name. Their guide spoke softly. "Tonight you will join the candlelight procession. Tomorrow, the baths. In Lourdes, everything begins with prayer." Deborah nodded, absorbing every detail. The chill of the stone underfoot, the faint echo of water running from the spring discovered by Bernadette. She wanted to remember all of it, the sound of devotion, the weight of centuries pressed into a single evening. That night in her small hotel room, she unpacked carefully, placing her rosary beside the bed, her phone on the charger. She scrolled through photos of the basilica glowing against the night sky. They were lovely but ordinary angles and colors, nothing divine. She wrote a quick message to her parish friends back home. "We arrived. It's beautiful. Feels like the world is praying at once." Then she closed her phone, knelt for a brief prayer, and whispered, "Thank you for bringing me here." Outside, the bells tolled compline. The town fell quiet, except for the murmur of pilgrims still walking toward the grotto. Deborah drifted to sleep, imagining candles reflected in water, tiny stars trembling in the wind. The next morning was filled with the bustle of the faithful. Deborah helped an elderly woman steady her wheelchair near the path to the baths. She noticed how easily strangers cared for one another here, how effortlessly compassion replaced conversation. Later, over lunch, someone asked what she hoped for most in Lourdes. Deborah smiled. "Nothing, really. I just wanted to say thank you." The deacon laughed. "Those are the people who get surprises." She didn't know he meant it prophetically. That afternoon, clouds gathered, and a soft drizzle turned the cobblestones slick. The guide assured them the evening procession would continue. Rain had never stopped Lourdes. Deborah returned to her room, rested, and prepared her poncho and small umbrella. She charged her phone again, mostly for practical reasons. She wanted to record the procession lights to show her parish students, to prove how faith could shine in the rain. When she looked out the window, she saw the candles beginning to move in long luminous rivers through the square. She felt a sudden pull, an eagerness that surprised her. Something inside whispered, "Go now. Don't miss a moment." She slipped on her jacket, joined the others, and stepped into the drizzle that smelled of stone and smoke. Ahead, the statue of Our Lady glowed like a lantern in fog, and a quiet conviction settled in her heart. This night would not be like any other. Rain had thinned to a mist by the time the procession began. Hundreds of pilgrims gathered, holding their candles high, wax cupped by paper shields that flickered with each breath of wind. The choir's voices drifted through the damp air, old hymns sung in many tongues but one rhythm. Deborah fell into step beside a woman from Ireland and a young man from Vietnam. Around them, torches cast halos of light that quivered on the wet stone. She lifted her phone and filmed the river of faith winding toward the basilica. No one shouted or jostled. Even the children were hushed. It was as if every heart had found the same pace, beating softly in time with Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. The path curved toward the grotto. A white glow spilled from the floodlights that framed the statue, throwing long reflections across the pool below. Mist gathered near the surface of the water like incense. Deborah snapped a photo, then another. The lens caught droplets clinging to the air, tiny prisms breaking the light into gold and violet. She wasn't thinking of miracles. She was thinking of the people she'd promised to pray for, the neighbors battling illness, the friend whose marriage had cracked under silence, her mother's constant back pain. She whispered their names as the hymn rose again. Somewhere above the singing, thunder murmured, low and distant. She felt it in her chest more than heard it. Yet instead of fear, there was calm. She held up her candle, and the flame steadied, untroubled by the wind. When the procession ended, she lingered near the grotto. The crowd thinned. Candles floated down the river. She wanted a last picture to remember the quiet. She steadied her phone and took a final shot of the statue framed by the rocky alcove, its white robe glowing against the darkness. The camera screen flashed once, twice, and she saw nothing unusual, just light and stone and the curve of the Virgin's hands. She lowered the phone, whispered a last Hail Mary, and turned away. Back at the hotel, the pilgrims filled the lobby with laughter and steam from wet coats. Someone passed around warm tea. Deborah smiled, listening to the stories, people comparing which saints they'd asked for intercession, which shrines they'd touched. She added nothing. Later in her room, she opened her phone again. The battery was low, but curiosity made her scroll through the pictures anyway. The rain had added a glimmer to every frame. The candlelight made even strangers look holy. She stopped at the last photo, the one she'd taken when the crowd was gone. Something in it pulled at her. The lighting looked strange, almost like the air above the statue had caught a second glow. It wasn't clear enough to call a shape, but it wasn't random either. She frowned, zoomed in, then out again. It could be the camera compensating for brightness, or maybe a reflection from her candle. Still, the image held her gaze until the screen dimmed. She set the phone aside and knelt to pray before bed. But her words wandered. "If there's something you're trying to show me," she whispered, "help me see it the way you want." Outside, bells marked midnight. The rain had stopped. Morning came with sunlight spilling over the mountains. The sky was spotless, as if the storm had washed every shadow away. The day's itinerary included the bath's ritual immersion in the cold spring that had flowed since Bernadette struck the ground in 1858. The whole day she had thought about that photo. Should I show it to them? She thought. It seemed silly, one picture out of dozens, a trick of light at best. Still, when the deacon asked whether anyone had noticed something beautiful during the procession, her heart gave a small, guilty leap. She said nothing. The second procession would begin soon. People were already gathering with candles and rosaries, their songs rising like mist. Deborah decided she'd take only a few pictures this time. She wanted to experience it with her eyes, not just through a screen. Yet when she picked up her phone to check the battery, her thumb brushed over the photo again, the one with the strange glow. The image filled the screen, brighter than she remembered. For a moment, it almost looked alive, as if the light itself were breathing. She caught her reflection in the glass, wide eyes, uncertain smile. She turned off the phone, slipped it into her bag, and whispered, "If I'm meant to see something, I'll see it." It was past midnight when Deborah finally returned to her room. Something about the evening, the music, the hush that had fallen over the crowd, the strange pull in her chest felt unfinished, as though a question had been asked but not answered. She made tea from a packet, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened her phone. One by one, she flipped through the photos from the procession. The first few were ordinary, a sea of flames moving through the square, rain glittering like dust. Then she reached the last image. Her breath caught. The light above the statue was still there, only now it seemed sharper. A faint outline shimmered in the glow like fabric stirred by a breeze, a presence hovering where there should have been empty air. The form was human in the gentlest way, slender, luminous, almost translucent. She zoomed in, afraid the shape would disappear, but it held. It wasn't a blur or reflection she could reason away. The light felt intentional, alive. Deborah set the phone down as if it were fragile. For a long time, she simply stared at it, pulse steady, mind racing. She was a practical woman, not prone to fantasies. She'd seen enough in hospitals to know what imagination could do to tired minds. But this, she crossed the room and drew the curtains open. The town lay silent beneath the stars, the grotto lights dim in the distance. She knelt, pressing her hands together. "Lord, if this is a trick of my eyes, take it away. But if it's you, if it's your mother, show me what to do." No answer came, only the faint hum of night. Yet peace settled over her like warm water. She slept with her phone beside the bed. In the morning, she tried to act normal, joining her group for mass and breakfast. But the image haunted her thoughts. Between prayers, she'd open the photo again, convincing herself it was a coincidence, then feeling that same quiet tremor in her chest. At lunch, she confided in Maria, the older pilgrim who had smiled at her the day before. "I think I captured something strange in a picture," she said softly. Maria leaned in. "Strange how?" Deborah showed her the photo. The woman's eyes widened. She crossed herself. "It's beautiful. Did you send it to anyone?" "No. I don't want to cause a stir. Maybe it's just light. Or maybe it's light with a purpose." They said nothing more, but the words lingered. That afternoon, Deborah approached the group's priest. He listened patiently, brows furrowed, and examined the phone. "I can't tell you what it is," he said at last. "Cameras see differently than eyes. Sometimes they reveal what we miss. Sometimes they invent it. Either way, you should pray for clarity, not proof." She nodded. "Should I delete it?" "Why would you?" He smiled. "Truth isn't threatened by light." Back in her room, she uploaded the image to her laptop for a clearer look. On the larger screen, the glow seemed to breathe. Around the edges, candle smoke swirled like clouds. The figure's outline was unmistakable, now an arch of veil, the tilt of a head bent slightly downward. Her heart thudded once, then steadied. It wasn't fear she felt. but something deeper, a sense of being seen. She opened her Bible to the Magnificat. "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior." The words leapt from the page, as if they had been waiting for her. That evening, while the others prepared for dinner, Deborah sat alone by the window, watching the sunset spill gold over the rooftops. She thought of Bernadette again, the shy peasant girl kneeling before light. People had doubted her too, called her foolish or delusional. Yet her humility had outlasted every skeptic. Deborah whispered, "If this picture is real, let it be for you, not for me." The next morning, a rest day before their journey to Spain, Deborah joined a few friends walking through the sanctuary gardens. Someone had heard about her photo. Word traveled quickly in groups like theirs and asked to see it. Soon they were huddled around her phone, murmuring prayers and theories. One man suggested lens flare. Another said maybe the statue's lighting had shifted. But Maria shook her head. "Look at the folds," she said quietly. "They're not random." A volunteer overheard and approached. "You might want to show that to the staff at the information office," he suggested. "They keep a record of unusual photos." Deborah hesitated. The idea of handing her phone to strangers felt invasive, almost irreverent. Still, she followed the advice and visited the office later that day. A kind woman in a blue scarf examined the image, then smiled politely. "We receive many pictures like this," she said in accented English. "Sometimes they are tricks of light, sometimes beautiful accidents. But what matters most is the prayer behind them." She thanked her and left, neither dismissed nor confirmed, hovering between mystery and mundane. That night she couldn't sleep. The photo had become more than pixels. It had become a question. She lay awake listening to the rain tapping the window, wondering why she of all people would see something others could not. Around midnight she rose, dressed quietly, and slipped out into the street. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with petrichor. She walked toward the sanctuary, where the lights still glowed faintly. The gates were open for late pilgrims. The grotto was nearly empty, just a handful of people praying softly in the shadows. Deborah sat on a bench near the back, her candle trembling in the breeze. She opened her phone again. The photo glowed in the dark like a living ember. Something in her whispered, "Go again tomorrow." The following day, she told Maria she planned to attend one more procession before they left. "I need to see for myself," she said. Maria smiled. "Then we'll go with you." As the sun dipped behind the mountains, Deborah joined the gathering crowd. This time, the air carried a strange expectancy. Even the birds seemed quieter. She held her candle tighter, heart drumming not with fear, but with wonder. By now she knew the photo was more than an image, it was an invitation. And as the first notes of the hymn rose, she lifted her eyes toward the statue and thought, "If you are there, let me see you once more." The crowd swelled as night came down, a slow tide of voices and flickering firelight. The basilica bells struck 8, their echoes rolling through the valley like distant thunder. Candles lifted one by one until the square shimmered as if stars had descended to earth. Deborah joined the procession near the end, the familiar melody of Ave Maria carrying her forward. She had promised herself she would not chase signs, yet her hands trembled as she held the phone. It was not superstition, only an ache to understand what had already begun. Rain from the previous night had left the air clean, cool, full of scent from wet stone and wax. Floodlights washed the statue of Our Lady in pale silver. The grotto wall sparkled with moisture, the spring below murmuring softly like a heartbeat under the hymn. The group halted for a prayer. Deborah raised her candle, then her phone, framing the statue through the screen. For a moment nothing happened, just the white figure, the crowd beyond it, the light diffused by mist. Then a faint shimmer appeared above the Virgin's head, so subtle she thought her eyes were playing tricks. She blinked, steadied her hand. The shimmer grew brighter, resolving into a soft column of light, narrow and tall. It pulsed gently, almost breathing. Her pulse leapt. Through the lens, the air seemed to shift threads of brightness winding together until a shape emerged, as if woven out of pure radiance. A veil, a bowed head, the suggestion of folded hands. Deborah gasped, but no sound came. Around her, people continued singing, unaware. She whispered, "Mary." The glow intensified, not blinding but tender, like moonlight made personal. Tears blurred her vision. For one heartbeat, she lowered the phone and looked with her naked eyes. The air above the statue was empty, ordinary. But when she lifted the camera again, the figure returned clearer, more defined. It felt impossible, yet it was happening. Maria touched her shoulder. "Are you all right?" Deborah handed her the phone. "Look." Maria squinted, then covered her mouth. "I see her," she breathed. Others nearby turned, drawn by her tone. One by one they looked, and a hush fell over the small cluster of pilgrims. A man began to cry quietly. Another knelt on the wet stone. For several minutes they stood in silence, surrounded by the song of thousands who knew nothing of what was unfolding in that tiny circle of light. Then, as gently as it had come, the glow thinned, dissolved back into mist, and was gone. Deborah lowered the phone. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was still. She felt no fear, only fullness, as if the space inside her had been widened by love. Maria whispered, "Take another." Deborah did. The second image showed only the statue, serene and white. Whatever had visited them left no trace but peace. After the procession, they walked in silence through the lamplit streets. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of rain and roses. Deborah said nothing until they reached the hotel. Inside, she sat on the bed and opened the gallery. The new pictures looked ordinary, but the first one, the one from the moment of light, was different again. The shape above the statue glowed softly, clearer than ever, as if the photo itself had absorbed what her eyes could not hold. She stared until her tears blurred it. "Thank you," she whispered. Sleep was impossible. She wrote a short note in her journal. "If this is a sign, it is not proof. It is invitation to trust, to believe without knowing." Morning brought calm. At breakfast, Maria reached for her hand. "You should show the priest." "I will, but not for confirmation." He listened quietly when she found him. When she finished, he said, "You have seen something beautiful. Do not worry about others believing you. In the end, miracles are conversations between God and the soul that receives them." That afternoon, the group boarded the bus that would take them toward Spain. Through the window, Deborah watched the mountains fade. The phone rested in her lap, the screen dark. She did not need to look again. The image was already printed inside her. As the bus wound down the valley road, sunlight pierced the clouds, scattering gold over the fields. Someone began humming Ave Maria, and soon the whole bus joined. Deborah added her voice, soft and steady. Weeks later, back in Texas, she finally uploaded the photo with a short caption. Taken in Lourdes, September 30th, 2017. "May this light bring peace to anyone who sees it." She expected little. Within days, the image spread from one parish group to another, crossing languages and continents. Messages arrived from strangers. Prayers, thanks, disbelief, wonder. Some called it a miracle, others a trick of exposure. Deborah read them all, smiling faintly. For her, the debate didn't matter. What had changed her wasn't what she saw through the camera, It was what she felt when the light touched her. That sudden certainty that heaven was not far away, that love still slipped quietly into the world. She printed the photo, placed it inside her Bible, and went back to her ordinary life, teaching Sunday school, caring for her mother, lighting candles for others. She never sought attention again. But every evening, when the sun dipped low and her kitchen filled with gold, she would pause, whispering the same words she'd spoken that night in the grotto. "Thank you for letting me see you." Months passed, and the rhythm of life returned, yet something in Deborah never quite reset to its old pace. The photo had traveled far beyond her shared, reposted, reinterpreted, until it lived a life of its own. She would see it pop up in places she had never heard of. Spanish prayer groups, Filipino news pages, a French devotional blog that called it the Light of Lourdes. Someone even overlaid it with the words, "Mary appears again to the faithful." At first, the attention made her uneasy. She hadn't sought fame or even recognition. The picture had been meant as a private thanksgiving, a reminder that gratitude is a form of prayer. But now it carried voices and claims she couldn't control. Emails came from journalists asking for interviews. Messages arrived from skeptics demanding explanations. Deborah responded to none of them. To friends who asked, she would only say, "It was light. What you see in it depends on what you're looking for." One Sunday afternoon, after teaching catechism, she sat in the quiet of the empty classroom, sunlight falling across the blackboard. A child's drawing of the Virgin Mary fluttered on the wall, the crayons bright and clumsy. She smiled. The children never argued about authenticity. They saw, they believed, they drew what they felt. Her phone vibrated with another notification, a YouTube comment on the video she had posted months earlier. She hesitated, then opened it. A woman from Brazil had written, "When I looked at your photo, my heart felt peace. Thank you for sharing this." Deborah read the words twice. They were simple, unadorned, but they carried the same quiet tone that had filled her that night at Lourdes. She whispered, "Then it was worth it." That evening she visited her parish chapel. The place was empty, candles guttering low. She knelt before the tabernacle and laid her phone on the pew beside her. "You've let me see so much," she prayed softly, "but help me remember that faith doesn't depend on sight." Silence answered, but it was the kind of silence that breathes. She thought again of the priest's words in Lourdes. Miracles are conversations between God and the soul that receives them. The conversation was still ongoing, she realized. Every time someone saw the photo and felt stirred, the dialogue continued. The miracle was no longer a picture. It was the chain of hearts quietly turning toward wonder. Later that year, the photo resurfaced during the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. A friend sent her a screenshot from a Catholic news page. Possible new apparition at Lourdes. The article quoted experts, skeptics, priests, photographers. One analyst concluded, probably lens flare. Another said, maybe a call to prayer. Deborah laughed softly. Both could be true. She printed the article, folded it, and tucked it behind the photograph in her Bible. When her students asked about it, she told them the story, not as proof, but as parable. Sometimes heaven borrows the simplest tools. A girl's eyes in 1858. A camera lens in 2017. What matters isn't the tool, it's the openness to see. Years would pass before she returned to France, but when she finally did, the sanctuary looked the same. The candlelight, the hush, the statue still shining white against the dark. She knelt where she had stood that night. The world had changed, new phones, new wars, new doubts, but here the air was the same mix of wax and prayer. She closed her eyes. For a moment she thought she felt the same gentle warmth, that pulse of light brushing her soul. When she opened them, nothing unusual filled the sky, only stars. But that was enough. She smiled. Lourdes has always been a place where heaven and earth seem to lean toward each other, as if drawn by memory. Since the day Bernadette knelt in the mud and saw a lady no one else could, millions have come seeking healing, answers, or simply a moment of quiet in a noisy world. 70 miracles have been confirmed by doctors and theologians, each examined with a rigor stricter than science itself. But for every recognized healing, there are thousands of unrecorded ones, moments that leave no documentation, only gratitude. Deborah's story joined that hidden archive. The private miracles that live in photographs, in tears, in changed hearts. In Lourdes, light behaves differently. Candles seem brighter, shadows gentler. The air carries the breath of countless prayers, and water flows from the spring, as if it remembers every hand that touched it. Those who come here soon learn that miracles don't always defy physics. They expand it. They happen when grace moves through ordinary matter, through stone, through water, through the lens of a camera held by someone humble enough to look. Skeptics often ask, why doesn't heaven reveal itself plainly, without ambiguity? The answer hides in the nature of faith. If every mystery came with proof, belief would be a transaction, not a relationship. Lourdes teaches a subtler truth, that God often whispers rather than shouts, and the ones who hear are those still enough to listen. Deborah's photograph never needed validation to matter. It served the oldest purpose of miracles, to remind the weary that they are not alone. Some saw nothing but glare, yet still lingered on the image a little longer than they expected. And in that pause, wonder returned. Maybe that is how heaven works in an age of screens and pixels, not by suspending nature, but by using its light to send invitations. Bernadette once said, "My job is to inform, not to convince." The same could be said of Deborah. She didn't argue for belief. She simply shared what she had seen and left the rest to the hearts of others. That is why her photo endures. It isn't a proof of God, it's a mirror of longing. Look closely, and you might see what she saw. A quiet tenderness hovering just above the world's noise. At Lourdes, pilgrims often describe the same sensation. Not shock, not spectacle, but peace. They come burdened and leave lighter, though their illnesses may remain. They discover that miracles are not always cures, they are recognitions. Moments when love becomes visible, even for a heartbeat. Perhaps that's why the Virgin keeps returning, not to prove power, but to remind humanity of gentleness. In every century, she finds new language. Water in the 1800s, light in the 1900s, perhaps a digital image in the 21st. Each time, she speaks through what her children understand. For Deborah, the conversation began with a camera click. For those who saw her photo online, it continued in the quiet stirring of their own hearts. Faith traveled through fiber optics, carrying a fragment of the grotto's glow into countless homes. Maybe that is the miracle most suited to our time, that grace can stream at the speed of light. And somewhere, perhaps, the Virgin smiled.